Hare Krishna, welcome to the 8th class of the Krishna book. We're on chapter 17. Krishna is about to subdue a forest fire. And first, we'll start with kirtan.
Musician's audio. All right, sweet souls, let's drop in together for a little calling out. Calling out to our lordships, to Radha, to Krishna. Putting ourselves in front of this transcendental sound vibration. And letting go of anything from your day that might distract you from being present here together now. Not ignoring it, just setting it aside for now. As we join together in Sangha and spiritual community to take shelter, to study, to learn, to grow, to transcend. Take a deep breath in through your nose, fill up. Open your mouth, exhale, let it go. Inhale, we fill, opening prayers. Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Bhavadebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashrakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So last week we heard about the subduing of, I think it was Dhenukasura, the donkey demon, and also Kaliya. Kaliya, the whole drama. Krishna apparently struggling apparently with this 100-hooded serpent in the Yamuna River. And a lot of beautiful details in those two chapters. Let's start with some reflections. Anything that stood out? We had some nice reflections in WhatsApp especially about the prayers. I noted that the prayers of the Nagapatnis, the wives of Kaliya, they were actually devotees. So their intervention actually really was crucial for Kaliya, and his own humility when he realized and he surrendered himself also to Krishna. So anything around that or anything that you heard in the last two chapters?
I really loved everyone's reflections in the chat. And one that really, I know this is not it's a reflection to someone else's reflection.
It's okay.
But Eileen shared in the chat, just as Krishna's presence made the Yamuna sacred again, his presence in our hearts purifies our thoughts, actions, and relationships. By inviting Krishna into our lives, we allow divine love to dispel the poisons within us, making room for true spiritual nourishment. And I really appreciated that share, Eileen. And it had me thinking about the fourth stage of bhakti, anartha-nivriti, and how as I continue to dedicate my life and remain to bhakti and remain steadfast in my sadhana and in seva and in sangha, how I enter the stage of anartha-nivriti, and it's like removing of unwanted parts of my heart.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about how that's like Krishna's presence is really like, it's dispelling, it's pulling out the poison, it's pulling out the parts of me that are not in alignment with Krishna consciousness and are not in alignment with my true nature, and how it's like drawing that out. And it's such a painful experience, yet it's like sattva, it's poison in the beginning and it's nectar in the end. And so it's leading us to that. It's leading me and all of us practicing to the stage of where like, okay, there is nishtha on the other side. There is steadiness on the other side. Like I can develop more of a taste, and this is part of the process. And, the Kaliya, the story is that reminder of like, Krishna then dispels the nectar, and he still like liberates Kaliya in the end and gives that mercy and compassion. And like his wives are begging for mercy for him. And Eileen's share just was bringing me to that, my own personal reflection on my own process of anartha-nivriti. And
yeah, we saw it with Kaliya. He was spitting fire and poison, and it was only when he had exhausted himself of all those that he started to he was purified enough that he started to reflect on what was actually happening, that I'm losing this battle and who am I actually fighting here?
Right.
And I should surrender. And actually all these interactions with Krishna and the demons, as we've been pointing out every time, they represent specific anarthas that are getting purified just by hearing about these pastimes, because Krishna is actually extracting that particular mentality, that particular misunderstanding, stubbornness, just burden on the conditioned soul. He did it when he did that pastime, and hearing about that pastime, because it's absolute, it's on the spiritual platform, you actually associate with that purifying process again. And it's one of the benefits of hearing Krishna's pastimes over and over and over again.
And just like how every single one of these pastimes is intentional and has a reason, right? And a different anartha that it's going to dispel, every circumstance and challenge in my own life and everyone's lives is happening for a specific reason that I'm not privy to. And it is giving me the opportunity either to feed that narta or to spell it.
Yeah. Thank you. Jai, more reflections?
I just appreciate in general how so many of these stories just show Krishna being steady in the face of severe distress, monsters. I mean, you name it, all the things that, calamity that could be happening to him or to people he loves or to his community. And it's just this thread through everything that, with this practice, there is an element of steadiness that we can all lean on and have within us to see us through hard times. And I just like, as I'm reflecting back on where we've read, to date, that's sort of the biggest theme that's been kind of sticking out to me.
Thank you. Yeah, that reminds me of the reactions of Krishna's friends when they saw the Aghasura, the snake demon, the giant serpent. They're like, whoa, that's really far out. And it's not a statue, it's actually a giant serpent. Oh, well, let's just walk in. We'll be fine. Doesn't matter. Krishna's got us. And they were completely fearless for themselves. Like, for themselves, they didn't worry at all because they knew that Krishna would take care of everything. And there's that pattern that Krishna himself has nothing to fear. Everything is actually, Krishna is all play and no work. Everything he's doing is that's why it's called Leela. Leela just means play. Pastime. He doesn't have to do anything. He's not forced. He doesn't have to go to work. He doesn't have to like tolerate something beyond his control. It's all just play. He's playing with his own energies. And he's in the play, he's surrendered to it, so he's actually just playing. He's not actually being omnipotent. He's just going with it. And that fearlessness, that carefree nature is there for him and for all of his devotees, we can see. The only kind of exception is when we saw, like with Kaliya, when Krishna was in danger, apparently, then they had concern. But they actually just, because it's around Krishna, it just deepened their own meditation on him. They weren't able to tear their eyes away. They were there at the banks of the river, Yamuna, watching him, apparently like struggling, and is he going to make it? Is he not? It was just this deepened Krishna conscious experience. But there's no actual like material struggle going on ever, unlike everything in the material world.
One of the things that I thought was interesting, and I think it was in this last chapter 16, where it was stated that every entity that was there during the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan and in the woods and wherever they were having these events happen, every being down to the bug on the blade of grass had to have an elevated karmic reason for being there, including the demons and everybody that was acting in these pastimes. That's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. And it's I don't know, it's just got me thinking, because I don't really have a conclusion. That's the end of my thought on that right now.
Yeah, that meditation happens a lot actually as the 10th canto goes on, because it's the meta of what's happening is that beyond the story of Krishna and his pastimes is there's Maharaj Parikshit and Shukadeva Goswami. Parikshit is hearing, Shukadeva is speaking, and periodically will step out of the conversation and back into their conversation, and Maharaj Parikshit will say something like, this is unbelievable. I've been fasting from food and drink for like, the whole Bhagavatam takes 7 days. So this is like most of the way through, 5.5 days. Because if you line up all the books, 10th canto is a lot of the way through. And he's like, I'm just getting more and more enlivened by this whole experience. And it's so amazing what Krishna is doing. And it's so amazing. Everybody who's there is so fortunate. At different times, Shukadeva Goswami glorifies Krishna's parents, like Mother Yashoda. He glorifies the friends. He glorifies like the wives of the Brahmanas, which they come up later, another pastime. He glorifies the gopis. He glorifies all these different devotees. And like you said, there's actually so much mention of, and anyone who was there was already so elevated, or just by being there, they became so elevated. Just like Brahma was like, actually, I just want to take birth as a blade of grass here. This is where the real action is. This is beyond anything I've ever seen. I just want whoever has the right to be here to give me their blessings. So nice reflection.
My reflection was a pretty simple. My second reflection was kind of like everything comes from Krishna, right? So everything is Krishna's energy. And every time we're about ready to hear about some ugly demon or awfulness, there's these like beautiful descriptions of like how beautiful, like he's playing his flute and he's in these beautiful trees and beautiful flowers with these beautiful gopis. And then it's like dun dun dun, like then we got like, and it's just kind of cool to have the juxtaposition of like all the beauty and then kind of what, you know, again, anarta or demon that's getting kind of conquered, but then comes back to like, it's all from Krishna. So it really is all beautiful. So the insertion of that beauty, I think, is really, really sweet to have and kind of puts it in an interesting kind of perspective.
Yeah. And like we saw with Akasura, he liberated him and then the soul just like entered Krishna's body. So everything is graphically represented as being part of Krishna, because even the demons, when they get Krishna's mercy, we get reminded, although they lived their whole life trying to pretend they weren't, we get reminded that they're all just part and parcel of Krishna too. And it's described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that this, especially when Krishna is a child in Vrindavan, this periodic thing of some demon would come and Krishna would defeat them, and the boys would be like, wow, did you see that? That's amazing. They would sing songs about it, you know. This is like punctuation, Vishwanath says, because actually Krishna, he would become so lost in his experiences that they wouldn't even stop and have a meal otherwise. So these like demons would come, and it's like clockwork every day, and they say, okay, just finished killing a demon. Let's just sit down and have lunch now. This is a nice time. Let's take a break. We've been playing games for a while. Just killed a giant whatever gorilla or something. Let's have our lunch now. And Vishwanath says this is Yoga Maya energy, like creating the natural flow, the rhythm. So Krishna would actually move from one Lila to another. It's all just like he's so absorbed. But primarily his purpose is actually just to interact with his devotees. The whole purifying the demons thing is actually secondary. And as we see, really like it just gives so much pleasure to his friends. And then when the gopis and parents hear about it, they're like, I can't even believe it. Wow. So it's actually, even that is also just subservient to the flow of the joyful, spontaneous love that they're all sharing. Spontaneous, I said that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. That makes me want to read more. So we're going for it. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hey. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rakshama. Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Pahima. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshama. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahima. Jai Krishna book. Chapter 17, Extinguishing the Forest Fire. King Parikshit, after hearing of the chastisement of Kaliya, inquired from Shukadeva Goswami as to why Kaliya left his beautiful land and why Garuda was so antagonistic to him. Shukadeva Goswami informed the king that the island known as Nagalaya was inhabited by serpents, and that Kaliya was one of the chief serpents there. Being accustomed to eating snakes, Garuda used to come to this island and kill many serpents at will. Some of them he actually ate, but some were unnecessarily killed. So Garuda is Vishnu's carrier, and he's an interesting form of life. He's a spiritual being. He's a completely liberated soul, so he doesn't have a material body. But his form is kind of like a bird, but with human hands also. It's like a bird man. Like Hanuman is like a monkey, but not. So he eats snakes. That's his quota. Some of them he actually ate, but some were unnecessarily killed. The reptile society became so disturbed that their leader, Vasuki appealed to Lord Brahma for protection. Lord Brahma made an arrangement by which Garuda would not create a disturbance. On each half-moon day, the reptile community would offer a serpent to Garuda. The serpent was to be kept underneath a tree as a sacrificial offering to Garuda. Garuda was satisfied with this offering, and therefore he did not disturb any other serpents. But gradually, Kaliya took advantage of this situation. He was unnecessarily puffed up by the volume of his accumulated poison, as well as by his material power, and he thought, why should Garuda be offered this sacrifice? He then ceased offering any sacrifice. Instead, he himself ate the offering intended for Garuda. He's a cannibal. When Garuda, the great devotee carrier of Vishnu, understood that Kaliya was eating the offered sacrifices, he became very angry and rushed to the island to kill the offensive serpent. Kaliya tried to fight Garuda and faced him with his many hoods and poisonous sharp teeth. Kaliya attempted to bite him, and Garuda, the son of Tarksha, in great anger and with the great force befitting the carrier of Lord Vishnu, struck the body of Kaliya with his effulgent golden wings. Kaliya, who is also known as Kadrusuta, son of Kadru, immediately fled to the lake known as Kaliya Hrada, which lay within the Yamuna river and which Garuda could not approach. Kaliya took shelter within the water of the Yamuna for the following reason. Just as Garuda went to the island of the Kaliya snake, he used to also go to the Yamuna to catch fish to eat. There was, however, a great yogi known as Saubhari Muni, who used to meditate within the water there and who was sympathetic with the fish. He asked Garuda not to come there and disturb the fish. Although Garuda was not under anyone's order, being the carrier of Lord Vishnu, he did not disobey the order of the great yogi. Instead of staying and eating many fish, he carried off one big fish who was their leader. Saubhari Muni was sorry that one of the leaders of the fish was taken away by Garuda, and thinking of their protection, he cursed Garuda with the following words. Henceforward from this day, if Garuda comes here to catch fish, then, I say this with all my strength, he will be immediately killed. This curse was known only to Kaliya. Kaliya was therefore confident that Garuda would not be able to come there, and so he thought it wise to take shelter of the lake within the Yamuna. But Kaliya's taking shelter of Saubhari Muni was not successful. He was driven away from the Yamuna by Krishna, the master of Garuda. It may be noted that Garuda is directly related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is so powerful that he is never subject to anyone's order or curse. Actually, the cursing of Garuda, who is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam to be of the stature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, was an offense on the part of Saubhari Muni. Although Garuda did not try to retaliate, the Muni was not saved from his offensive act against a great Vaishnava personality. Due to this offense, Saubhari fell down from his yogic position and afterwards became a householder, a sense enjoyer in the material world. The fall down of Saubhari Muni, who was supposed to be absorbed in spiritual bliss by meditation, is an instruction to the offender of Vaishnavas. Sure. So, Saubhari Muni had some affection for the local denizens of his home, the fish, because he used to meditate in that pond. But he didn't appreciate that Garuda has a quota. He's entitled to eat too, you know? And rather than depopulating, he just took one to go. And Saubhari Muni didn't like it, he took it personally, so he criticized him. In fact, he cursed him. And that was done out of anger. It was done out of a kind of vindictiveness. It didn't come from a good place. He didn't recognize or remember that Garuda is actually a very dear associate of Krishna. I mean, his whole existence is service, Garuda's. So he treated him as a material personality, and he picked sides. And you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't pick sides against devotees, even if it means sometimes devotees are in a dispute with each other. Best not to pick sides unless it's your service. If you're a manager, if you have to like organize a community or something, you have to, move the energy. Best not to get involved, and certainly you don't want to like curse somebody like that to death with his yogic power. So he misused his yogic power, and because he misused it, he lost it. So whatever you misuse in your course of your offenses, you can either lose temporarily, or you might just get punished in such a way that you have to apply it properly. There was one devotee in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes who came to him, and he said, "My Lord, actually, when you first appeared in Mayapur here, you began your pastimes, I couldn't appreciate you and I couldn't appreciate your devotees. And I'm ashamed to say that I used to criticize them. And I feel so much shame because I recognize now your greatness, who you are, and therefore who your devotees are. And I don't know what to do because I've committed these offenses, blaspheming them. And which is not good, not a good thing. But Lord Chaitanya, he didn't curse him or anything like that. He said, actually, that same tongue that you've used to criticize devotees, use it to glorify them. And in this way, you'll become purified. And that overall was the mood. You know, there's different pastimes in Lord Chaitanya's Leela too, of this devotee offended that, or this person offended that series of devotees. And if they could get if they could apologize, if they could get the mercy of the devotee, the Vaishnava, then they would get the mercy of the Lord. So it's just an instruction to take very seriously the dearness of Krishna's devotees. It's actually really, it's more, just like it's more beneficial to have access to a devotee of the Lord than it is to have access to Krishna. It's more dangerous to be harsh or offensive towards one than it is to be offensive towards the Lord himself. You know, when Krishna was present, so many people didn't appreciate who he was. You know, so even though they're right with him, but a devotee can actually give so much mercy by which one can come to bhakti. They're in a way like even more relevant than Krishna himself. So they're like they're Krishna's agents. It's important to treat him with kindness. And Sobari Muni, in this Leela, of course, this is Krishna's Leela. So who knows with Sobari Muni's, what his deal is. But this great yogi had to temporarily lose his yogic status and become, bloop, fall down to the material platform, become apparently a sense enjoyer for some time. Loses austerity, loses knowledge, loses simplicity. Had to go to Home Depot, get complicated, decorate a kitchen, and have a head full of material desires. Temporarily. Okay? When Krishna finally came out of Kaliya's lake, he was seen by all his friends and relatives on the bank of the Yamuna. He appeared before them nicely decorated, smeared all over with chandana pulp, bedecked with valuable jewels and stones, and also completely covered with gold. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cowherd boys and men, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, Maharaj Nanda, and all the cows and calves, saw Krishna coming from the Yamuna, and it was as though they had recovered their very life. When a person regains his life, naturally he becomes absorbed in pleasure and joyfulness. They each in turn pressed Krishna to their chests, and thus they felt a great relief. It's like a group hug. They're all taking turns hugging Krishna. Because as we heard last week, they were in the most intense distress, Krishna conscious distress, but still, now there's the payoff, there's the release, the relief. Krishna's completely fine. Mother Yashoda, Rohini, Maharaj Nanda, and the cowherd men became so happy that, as they embraced Krishna, they thought they had achieved their ultimate goal of life. Balaram also embraced Krishna, but he was laughing because when everyone else had been so overwhelmed with anxiety, he had known what would happen to Krishna. All the trees on the bank of the Yamuna, along with all the cows, bulls, and calves, were full of pleasure because of Krishna's appearance there. The Brahmana inhabitants of Vrindavan immediately came with their wives to congratulate Krishna and his family members. And because Brahmanas are considered to be the spiritual masters of society, they offer their blessings to Krishna and his family on account of Krishna's release. They also asked Maharaj Nanda to give them some charity on that occasion. Being so pleased by Krishna's return, Maharaj Nanda gave many cows and much gold in charity to the Brahmins. While Nanda Maharaj was thus engaged, Mother Yashoda simply embraced Krishna and made him sit on her lap while she shed tears continuously. Since it was almost night, well, I'll just pause there for a second. When we're thinking about, this pastime of the devotees feeling transcendental anxiety because Krishna is apparently going to die right in front of them in such a ghastly way. Even though he doesn't, and Balaram knows he's not going to, they don't know that. So somebody could say like, well, why would Krishna put them through that, right? And I've already made the point that their communion with Krishna became more intense because of apparent possible separation. But we also see here that because he's okay afterwards, How does Prabhupada put it? It says, Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd men and Mother Yashoda became so happy that as they embraced Krishna, they thought they had achieved their ultimate goal of life, right? Sometimes, just like in material life, you have to almost lose or even actually lose what you really value to know what you value. Don't know what you got till it's gone. So they're not in material life. It's not like that. They can't actually lose Krishna. In fact, no one can lose Krishna. We're always his. What to speak of for them, because they're constantly in service to him. But apparently they would lose him, and so regaining him is just the greatest joy. It's again just another kind of it's the ebbs and flows of the Leela, the pastime. Since it was almost night and all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, including the cows and calves, were very tired, they decided to take their rest on the riverbank. In the middle of the night, while they were taking rest, there was suddenly a great forest fire, and it quickly appeared that the fire would soon devour all the inhabitants of Vrindavana. As soon as they felt the warmth of the fire, they immediately took shelter of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although he was playing just like their child. They began to say, "Our dear Krishna, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, our dear Balaram, reservoir of all strength, please try to save us from this all-devouring and devastating fire. We have no shelter other than you. This devastating fire will swallow us all." Thus they prayed to Krishna, saying that they could not take any shelter other than his lotus feet. Lord Krishna, being compassionate upon his own townspeople, immediately swallowed up the whole forest fire and saved them. This was not impossible for Krishna because he is unlimited. He has unlimited power to do anything he desires. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 17th chapter of Krishna, extinguishing the forest fire. Jai. So let me see that Krishna book. There's a piece of art, and then you can look up what this forest fire represents.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's in intercommunal discord among Vaishnavas.
wow.
So
Okay, so the forest fire represents discord, friction among Vaishnavas, right? So you have like that's so poignant for me, because in this planet we have devotees, and then we have people who are kind of temporarily, at least, indifferent to devotional service, and then you have some people who are inimical, but there are actually a lot of devotees. It's actually not that. Sometimes people ask, like, why is it that there's so few devotees? And I actually don't agree with that premise at all. In the ultimate sense, everyone's a devotee, but most people, I would argue, the majority of human beings on the planet are closer to being actively practicing bhakti than they are to being actively like with pitchforks in hand, like a demon. There are devotees in all kinds of traditions, and so when we see devotees arguing amongst themselves or between groups, it's actually just an anartha. It's actually like a foreign thing. It's an intrusion into what should be cooperation. It's like, okay, you serve the Lord that way, we serve him this way. That's great. More power to you. We're so happy that there's people like you on the planet. If there's more people like you, the world would be a better place. I used to say that to people in book distribution. Sometimes I'd be distributing Bhagavad Gita, and some overzealous Muslim or Christian would come and say, "Hey, it's not that, it's this." And I'd be like, "Oh, you're from that tradition?" And they'd be like, "Yes." And I'd be like, they're expecting I'm going to fight them or whatever. And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to meet a person of faith in this world. We need more people like you. If there were more people like you, this world would be a better place." And they'd be like disarmed. And sometimes if they're really, there was really like a lot of aggressive energy, they wouldn't stop there. And they would, continue. And I would say, you know what? Thank you. If I can see that you're so serious about the Lord, you should pray for me. And I would mean it. Like, you should actually go back home and pray for me that I can come closer to the Lord, because I consider that he will take the prayers of his sincere devotees very seriously. And I don't want anything more than that in this life anyway. And they'd be like, you know what? I will do that. Thinking they got it over on me. I'm like, great. We're friends. I know it, even if you don't know it. So as an interfaith thing, it's actually like a very important principle to not have there be strife. And also just within the Hare Krishna, Gaudiya Vaishnava community, within any bhakti community, within any household, within any, you know, friendship or whatever small group you want to go down to, there can be this friction, and it's the forest fire, you know. And so Krishna breathing that in. I'm trying to find the picture. Well, first of all, here's a nice picture. I don't know if I showed this last week. This is Krishna dancing on the Kaliya demon. I think I did show that, but it's okay. Doesn't get old.
I just want to say that I totally missed your dun dun dun.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually, like right at when something's gonna happen, you go dun dun dun.
So does Kishore.
I did that.
Here's
Oh, is that you?
here's Krishna breathing in. Hard to focus.
Ooh, that's a good picture.
Yeah. Moving the strife between devotees. Okay, chapter 18. Oh, we have something in chat.
A while ago.
Right, 17. Okay, so now on chapter 18. Killing the demon Pralambasura. Wow. We're just getting purified left, right, and center here. What does Pralambasura represent?
Pralambasura is lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain and honor.
Lusty inclinations, personal gain, and honor. Okay, if you got any of that, you can say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
After extinguishing the devastating fire, Krishna, surrounded by his relatives, friends, cows, calves, and bulls, and glorified by his friends' singing, again entered Vrindavana, which is always full of cows. While Krishna and Balaram were enjoying life in Vrindavan in the midst of the cowherd boys and girls, the season gradually changed to summer. The summer season in India is not very much welcomed because of the excessive heat. But in Vrindavan, everyone was pleased because summer there appeared just like spring. This was possible only because Lord Krishna and Balaram, who are the controllers even of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, were residing there. In Vrindavan, there are many falls which are always pouring water, and the sound is so sweet that it covers the sound of the crickets. And because water flows all over, the forest always looks very green and beautiful. The inhabitants of Vrindavan were never disturbed by the scorching heat of the sun or the high summer temperatures. The lakes of Vrindavan are surrounded by green grasses, and various kinds of lotus flowers bloom there, such as the kahlara, kunja, and utpala. And the air blowing in Vrindavan carries the aromatic pollen of those lotus flowers. When the particles of water from the waves of the Yamuna, the lakes, and the waterfalls touched the bodies of the inhabitants of Vrindavan, they automatically felt a cooling effect. Therefore, they were practically undisturbed by the summer season. Vrindavan is such a nice place. Flowers are always blooming, and there are even various kinds of decorated deer. Birds are chirping, peacocks are crowing and dancing, and bees are humming. The cuckoos there sing nicely in 5 kinds of tunes. Krishna, the reservoir of pleasure, blowing his flute, accompanied by his elder brother Balaram and the other cowherd boys and the cows, entered the beautiful forest of Vrindavan to enjoy the atmosphere. They walked into the midst of newly grown leaves of trees whose flowers resembled peacock feathers. They were garlanded by those flowers and decorated with saffron chalk. Sometimes they were dancing and singing, and sometimes wrestling with one another. While Krishna danced, some of the cowherd boys sang and others played on flutes. Some bugled on buffalo horns or clapped their hands, praising Krishna. "Dear brother, you're dancing very nicely." Actually, all these boys were demigods descended from higher planets to assist Krishna in his pastimes. The demigods garbed in the dress of the cowherd boys were encouraging Krishna in his dancing, just as one artist encourages another with praise. Up to that time, neither Balaram nor Krishna had undergone the hair cutting ceremony. I think Prabhupada might start talking about that. If not, it's coming of age. So their hair hasn't been cut.
The first time I get a haircut.
I guess, yeah. Therefore, their hair was clustered like crows' feathers. They were always playing hide and seek with their boyfriends, or jumping or fighting with them. Sometimes, while his friends were chanting and dancing, Krishna would praise them. "My dear friends, you are singing and dancing very nicely." The boys played at catching ball with fruits such as bale and amalaka. So if you ever wonder where all these ball games come from. Comes from Vrindavan. Krishna plays ball. They played blind man's buff, challenging and touching one another. Sometimes they imitated the forest deer and various kinds of birds. They joked with one another by imitating croaking frogs, and they enjoyed swinging underneath the trees. Sometimes they would play amongst themselves like a king and his subjects. In this way, Balaram and Krishna, along with all their friends, played all kinds of sports and enjoyed the soothing atmosphere of Vrindavana, full of rivers, lakes, rivulets, fine trees, and excellent gardens filled with fruits and flowers. Once, while the boys were engaged in their transcendental pastimes, a great demon of the name Pralambasura entered their company, desiring to kidnap both Balaram and Krishna. Although Krishna was playing the part of a cowherd boy, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he could understand everything, past, present, and future. So when Pralambasura entered their company, Krishna began to think how to kill the demon. But externally, he received him as a friend. "Oh, my dear friend," he said, "it is very good that you have come to take part in our pastimes." Krishna then called all his friends and ordered them, "Now we shall play in pairs. We shall challenge one another in pairs." With this proposal, all the boys assembled together. Some of them took the side of Krishna, and some of them took the side of Balaram, and they arranged to play in duel. The defeated members in duel fighting had to carry the victorious members on their backs, as a horse carries its master. They began playing and at the same time tended the cows as they proceeded through the Bandiravana forest. So, there's Krishna's team and Balaram's team, the two captains. Two team captains, and all the other boys are on Team Krishna or Team Balaram. And I don't know what the game is, it's not clear. But the game is played by dueling with one member of the opposing team. And whoever wins gets to ride on the back of the other person that they beat. The party of Balaram The party of Balaram, accompanied by Sri Dama and Vrishabha, came out victorious, and Krishna's party had to carry them on their backs through the Bandiravana forest. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, being defeated, had to carry Sri Dama on his back. Krishna's carrying his devotee on his back. Wow, that's pretty far out. And Bhadrasena carried Vrishabha. Imitating their play, Pralambasura, who appeared there as a cowherd boy, carried Balaram on his back. Pralambasura was the greatest of the demons, and he had calculated that Krishna was the most powerful of the cowherd boys. In order to avoid the company of Krishna, Pralambasura carried Balaram far away. So he thought, Krishna is very powerful, so I'll be on his team, and I'll fight this inferior Balaram. And then he carried Balaram far away. The demon was undoubtedly very strong and powerful, but he was carrying Balaram, who was compared to a mountain. Therefore, he began to feel the burden, and thus he assumed his real form. When he appeared in his real feature, he was decorated with a golden helmet and earrings, and looked just like a cloud with lightning carrying the moon. Yeah. Looked just like a cloud with lightning carrying the moon. Balaram observed the demon's body expanding up to the limits of the clouds, his eyes dazzling like blazing fire, and his mouth flashing with sharpened teeth. At first, Balaram was surprised by the demon's appearance, and he began to wonder, how is it that all of a sudden this carrier has changed in every way? But with a clear mind, he could quickly understand that he was being carried away from his friends by a demon who intended to kill him. Immediately, he struck the head of the demon with his strong fist. This is that moment. Looks like he's holding him down with the left and giving a beating with the right. I don't know if your picture is mirrored, but that's what we're seeing here. He's got him by the hair and he's giving him a boom with his fist. Drag around. He struck the head of the demon with a strong fist, just as the king of the heavenly planets. Who's the king of the heavenly planets? Pop quiz.
Indra.
Indra. Just as the king of the heavenly planets strikes a mountain with his thunderbolt. Stricken by the fist of Balaram, the demon fell down dead, just like a snake with a smashed head, and blood poured from his mouth. When the demon fell, he made a tremendous sound, and it sounded as if a great hill were falling upon being struck by the thunderbolt of King Indra. All the boys then rushed to the spot. Astonished by the ghastly scene, they began to praise Balaram with the words, "Well done, well done! Haribol." All of them then embraced Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death, and they offered their blessings and congratulations. Don't forget, he's just a boy. Balaram too.
Mm-hmm.
He's older than Krishna, but only by a year.
So in this Leela, Balaram is the one that killed
Yes,
the demon.
Balaram kills
That's
two
the
demons.
first one that
He
we-
kills the donkey demon, and he kills this demon. And there's a
he
reason
killed
for
the
that.
donkey.
Yes, he killed the first donkey, and then his donkey friends came, and Krishna killed the rest of them.
Yeah.
I'll get to that, why that is. All the demigods, so all of them then embraced Balaram, the boys, embraced Balaram with great affection, thinking that he had returned from death, and they offered their blessings and congratulations. All the demigods in the heavenly planets became very satisfied and showered flowers on the transcendental body of Balaram, and they also offered their blessings and congratulations for his having killed the great demon Pralambasura. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 18th chapter of Krishna, killing the demon Pralambasura. Jai. So, as Kishori very astutely noted, there are two demons that Krishna didn't kill. Balaram kills them. And as we've been hearing, the demons that Krishna kills represent particular anarthas, particular obstacles, attachments, misunderstandings, material stuff, junk in the heart. And by hearing about how Krishna kills them, we become purified of them. Now, this science of what corresponds to what and how that works, this is given to us by Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our great acharyas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that for the majority of the anarthas in the heart of a conditioned soul, we do not have the power to independently remove them. It's not within our power to independently remove the different mentalities that those anarthas represent, i.e. those demons that are killed by Krishna. We require his help to do that. Now, we're agents in that because we have to want his help. Krishna respects the free will of the living entity. He'll never give himself to anybody who doesn't want him, right? And he'll never deny himself to anybody who does want him. So we have to want him. You have to ask for him. But at the end of the day, he has to do the work because he's Krishna and we're not. But as you can see, there are two demons that Krishna doesn't kill, Balaram kills. And Balaram is the Adi Guru. He's the origin of the Guru Tattva, which means as the first expansion of Krishna, he's very similar to Krishna in so many ways, except he has a very particular attitude, an attitude of service. He has the beginnings of the service attitude to Krishna because even he wants to serve Krishna. And from Balaram expands so many opportunities for service. The Balaram is the first teacher of the science of Krishna consciousness because he's the first servant of Krishna. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that the anarthas represented by those two demons, they're anarthas that are removed by the Guru. And they're removed by the Guru in response to the actual sincere endeavor of the disciple. Those are anarthas that require our particular application of self.
So the first one, the donkey,
Dhenukasura.
Dhenukasura, represents gross material intelligence, ignorance of spiritual knowledge.
Yeah, so you have to do the work. You have to do the work yourself under Guru to become purified of gross material intelligence. And what?
And ignorance of spiritual knowledge.
And ignorance of spiritual knowledge. So letting go of gross material intelligence and deliberately taking in spiritual knowledge is within our power to do. And then what was Pralambasura representing? Today's demon?
Lusty inclinations and desire for personal gain and honor.
Yeah, lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain and honor. So we have some agency in that. We can and need to let go of some of that. And maybe you can't let go of it perfectly, but you got to try.
What was this? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to just jump in.
Pralambasura, what does he represent?
Well, I'm on this. Killed by the first one I have. The second one is lusty personal gain. And what was the other part?
It was lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain and honor.
Lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain and honor.
Lusty inclinations, desire for personal gain. So these are like these seem to be things that are like, I could have those things, you could have those things.
Yeah.
We do have
I
them.
hate to break it to you, but I do. I don't know about you, but I do.
Not
And that's
breaking
the
it to
point.
me. No, but like, so we have them, and we, but some of the other ones that Krishna kills, those are
We can have those too. But what we don't have is the capacity to become purified of those on our own. You have to want to get purified of them. But
okay.
Krishna actually does the removing himself. You know, so here we have, it's a little bit of a technical point, but the point is self-help has to include yourself, but it also has to ultimately continue into taking shelter of the Supreme Self. We are not actually potent enough to become completely purified on our own. Otherwise, we would have done it already. It's like dealing with addiction. You know, there's a way in which you have to support the addict. They've lost some of their own agency, some of their own power, and so we're actually, it's very small. We're very small living entities. We don't have Krishna's strength, and his material energy is more powerful than us. But we can choose him. That we can do. We can choose him, and he's more powerful than she is, the material energy.
So yeah, so I mean, like you said, we can choose him. These are things that we have, and and if we're following my assumption, not, I don't want to assume, I hate to assume, but for me, I can say, part of, a lot of the reason, is I definitely want to be a better person, and there's all these other things, but obviously, not obviously, but these are things that I never really did. They're in me, but I definitely don't want to do them. So I could always reach out to Krishna and say, oh my goodness, I'm having, like, if you're an addict, you go to meetings and you are asking Krishna, if you're in the 12-step program with Krishna, with like Jivaji, you're asking Krishna to help with the desire to stop gambling, sex, drink it, whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
If you're not in Krishna consciousness, you're asking the same thing, but not of Krishna, as you're asking for help from whomever. But at the end of the day, like you just said, but you have to want to do, you have to do it yourself. Like, you can ask for help all you want, but if you keep going to buy heroin, you're going to stay a heroin addict.
Right. Yeah. So you have to take shelter of Krishna ultimately, and you also have to apply yourself. Correct.
That's the endeavor.
Yeah. Endeavor and mercy. Both are required. Any other questions or comments? We have a short chapter coming up, so I think I can finish that even too. It's a second forest fire.
Yeah, so
But let's see if we have any comments or questions, reflections first.
I love how this is, I love how this is part of Krishna book. I haven't caught that before, or like contemplated before, asked about it before, of like, oh, Balaram's killing two of the demons, and so it's underscoring the need for us to take shelter of Krishna and to take shelter of Guru.
Yeah, and
Right.
in our service to Guru, we have to apply ourselves.
Right.
Right. That's part of what they're looking for.
Right.
Is that, like if you're drowning in the ocean and someone throws you a life preserver, you have to like at least put your hands around it. Hold on.
Yeah.
So you can't say like, well, I can't hold on. Someone come here and wrap it around me. I won't do anything.
Right.
There's got to be some,
You have to help yourself.
even if you're only this big and you only got this much power, you got to try to use that. And that's what Krishna's looking for.
like in the 12-step program, recovery program, we say I am powerless, but I'm not helpless. Right? Krishna has the ultimate power, but that's where the life preserver comes from, but I can reach out and take a hold of it.
Yeah.
And
And also when it comes to those things those specific anarthas that we have the power to do something about, there are actionable items. Like if you are full of attachment to materialistic knowledge and you're absent to any spiritual knowledge, pick up a Bhagavad Gita,
read.
you know,
Yeah.
put down your remote control, turn off your TV and read the Bhagavad Gita. You can do that. Like anyone can do that. And you don't have to understand it all, but you can try. And you know, you can try to take on spiritual knowledge. You can make an attempt. And that's like a really powerful choice. It matters. It actually really matters.
May I share something
Yeah.
short? Just because you said that, I would oftentimes like put the news on, CNN, whatever, something like just in the background if I was home by myself. Since I came back from India, I haven't turned the TV on. I mean, we have one in every single room of the house. Even in my yoga room, there's a TV. I have not turned the TV on for back noise, for nothing. And I have done 16 rounds a day. I have read Krishna. I'm doing so many other beautiful things to fill that
Right.
like that dull time. That, what is this? It's not dull. There's a word.
Downtime. Empty space.
It's empty space, but it's like just
Right. Your downtime.
downtime, but just like kind of like I call it dumb time, because all it does is make me less smart. Like the more that I don't do that, the more that I'm reading the Gita, I'm reading Krishna book, I'm reading whatever, I'm taking my disciplical test, I'm doing all these other great things, and I'm not doing that, which is just bringing me down.
And I would it wouldn't be a stretch to say you're feeling the effects. It makes a difference.
Totally.
Yeah. It's like if you're thirsty, pour yourself a glass of water and drink it.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging.
The other reflection before knowing that it was Guru was kind of the connection. I also thought it was, again, going back to the sweetness that like Krishna's like, I've killed a whole bunch of demons now. Like, Balaram, like, I want you to get some praise and some glory and get the accolades. And I was kind of just like, that's what I thought when I first heard that, because he likes to make his, like, the servants of the servants of the servants, like he likes to make his servants happy.
Right.
And so I just kind of thought that could, I mean, that's how I took before I understood there was like more deeper meaning. Like, I just kind of thought it was like, oh, Krishna's kind of sharing the glory here with his brother. And I thought that was kind of cute.
Well, it is very cute. I wouldn't be surprised if that's there. In fact, I think I'd be surprised if it's there. Because the thing about Krishna's pastimes is that there's usually at least three or four things happening at once. There's usually several layers of things happening. And our acharyas have pointed out in different places that, you know, like when Nrsingadev appears out of the pillar to Prahlad Maharaj, that's to reciprocate with Prahlad's devotion. That's to kill Hiranyakashipu. That's to protect the demigods. That's to make Brahma's benediction correct, that Hiranyakashipu couldn't be killed in this way or that way, but he's doing all this, like there's a way in which he's reciprocating with Narada Muni too. There's like at least 5 different layers to that particular moment that our acharyas have pointed out. And there's probably more, you know, there's probably closer to 10 that we know of. What to speak of things that we don't know of. So Krishna, he's so expert that he's always, basically always, in my experience, doing more than one thing at a time. So yeah, he could just be like deeply loving to see his brother get praised. In fact, a couple of chapters ago, he just paused everything and said all this wonderful stuff about Balaram and how great he is, and oh, look at you, Balaram, these trees are bowing down to you because they're like, you're like the greatest, and these bees are buzzing. They must be your devotees taking birth again as bees, just to surround you with kirtan. And he loves that. So I'm sure that was there. Mm-hmm. And there's also this. It's interesting because there's different perspectives on the Leela. Like the ultimate purpose for Leela isn't to purify us of our anarthas. The ultimate purpose is Krishna's joy and the exchange of joy. But here in the material world, from the perspective of someone like me who has anarthas, there's that extra layer of meaning where it's like it's also doing that. There's also allegorical meaning, metaphorical meaning. There's any kind of metaphorical meanings you can find in Shastra that are there without it becoming just a metaphor. Like these things literally happened, right? And there's also metaphorical meaning to them. As opposed to like sometimes historians or like people who study mythology, they'll look at Krishna's pastimes or whatever, and they'll be like, yes, this has a metaphorical meaning, but they don't accept anything about it actually being literally true. So we're not like that. We'll say like, no, there's definitely metaphorical layers, and there's also the fact that it literally happened. And so there's all these different kinds of layers of meaning, and one of them is the purification. Another one is just, yeah, Krishna loves to see Balaram get glorified. All right, let's finish this 19th chapter. Start and finish. Devouring the forest fire. While Krishna and Balaram and their friends were engaged in the pastimes described above, the cows, being unobserved, began to wander off on their own, entering farther and farther into the deepest part of the forest, allured by fresh grasses. Reminds me of when after Agasura, when Brahma tried to trick Krishna, it happened because the cows were looking for new grass. The goats, cows, and buffalo traveled from one forest to another and entered the forest known as Ishikatavi. This forest was full of green grass, and therefore they were allured. But when they entered, they saw that there was a forest fire, and they began to cry. On the other side, Balaram and Krishna, along with their friends, could not find their animals, and they became very much aggrieved. They began to trace the cows by following their footprints, as well as the paths of eaten grass. All the boys were fearing that their very means of livelihood, the cows, were now lost. While searching out the cows in the forest, they themselves became very tired and thirsty. Soon, however, they heard the crying of their cows. Krishna began to call the cows by their respective names with great noise. Yet Krishna has actually named all of his cows. And described at the end of the day, he calls them all by name. Sometimes they hide from him just to hear him say their name more than once. Then they come running. Vishwanath talks about this in his purports. Upon hearing Krishna calling, the cows immediately replied with joy. But by this time, the forest fire had surrounded all of them, and the situation appeared to be very fearful. The flames increased as the wind blew very quickly, and it appeared that everything movable and immovable would be devoured. All the cows and the boys became very frightened, and they looked toward Balaram and Krishna the way a dying man looks at the picture of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said, dear Krishna, you and Balaram are very powerful. We are now burning from the heat of this blazing fire. Let us take shelter of your lotus feet. We know you can protect us from this great danger. Our dear friend Krishna, we are your intimate friends. It is not right that we should suffer in this way. We are all completely dependent on you, and you are the knower of all religious life. We do not know anyone except you. The Personality of Godhead heard the appealing voices of his friends, and casting a pleasing glance over them, he began to answer. By speaking through his eyes, he impressed upon his friends that there was no cause for fear, and he assured them, don't worry. Imagine Krishna looking at you, and with his eyes he's saying, don't worry. Your eyes are very expressive, right? We find, like in the Bhagavatam, a lot of the time there's descriptions of like, such and such person moved his eye this way, or like their eyebrows. There's a lot of eyebrow language. And sometimes it could seem like kind of interesting or weird, but the eyes are so expressive. And so in Vedic culture, the use of the eyebrows and the eye muscles are very, very subtle. There's a lot of muscles around the eye, creates a lot of different expressions. So different moods and different communication. Who knows what's possible even for Krishna? Like he's telling them, don't worry, with his eyes. Then Krishna, the supreme mystic, the powerful personality of Godhead, immediately swallowed up all the flames of the fire. The cows and boys were thus saved from imminent danger. Out of fear, the boys were almost unconscious. But when they regained their consciousness and opened their eyes, they saw that they were again in the Pandira forest, with Krishna, Balaram, and the cows. They were astonished to see that they were completely free from the attack of the blazing fire and that the cows were saved. They secretly thought that Krishna must not be an ordinary boy, but some demigod. In the evening, Krishna and Balaram, along with the boys and cows, returned to Vrindavan playing their flutes. As they approached the village, all the gopis became very joyous. Throughout the day, the gopis used to think of Krishna while he was in the forest, and in his absence, they were considering one moment to be like 12 years. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 19th chapter of Krishna, devouring the forest fire. Krishna book ki jai.
You know what the second forest fire represents?
Yes, the second forest fire represents
Disturbance of religious principles and interference with religious people who are atheist.
by the atheists.
No, who are atheist. It says disturbance of religious principles
Disturbance of religious principles.
and interference with religious people who are atheists.
And interference of religious people. Yeah, that seems like a typo.
Yeah. I don't
So
get that.
you maybe look up another site. But disturbance of spiritual principles and spiritual people. Possibly involving non-spiritual people. We're not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I can relate to that. It's a tough world out there.
Sure it is.
So we heard 3 chapters. It's pretty good. In the chat we have, it goes with everything we said in beginning in reflections. Stay steady in fear and sorrow. Krishna will take care of everything. Yeah. That was probably, I guess, was that in response to Krishna telling the boys not to worry with his eyes? That's him.
Who said that?
Saraswati.
Saraswati.
You can elaborate if you want. In the meantime,
Specifically represents the disturbance of religious principles and interference with religious people by atheistic or materialistic views.
yeah. So how the way in which like materialistic, non-spiritual perspectives interfere with the spiritual practices, spiritual people.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're ever feeling that, just read about Krishna swallowing the forest fire. I mean, if you think about what a forest fire would be like to be in the middle of, you know, that's an intense situation. You can't do anything. It's like, what do you do? So that completely surrounded. I mean, presumably it was so loud that he couldn't even talk. Krishna had to speak with his eyes. The everything was up in flames. Otherwise, why would he have to look at them and just communicate with his eyes? So it's dire. So life can seem like that. It can seem like you're surrounded by non-spiritual forces impinging you. And just like the boys did, just reach out to Krishna and trust that he'll swallow that fire. All right, let's end our readings for now. We can take any comments, questions, and reflections. We heard 3 different chapters. We heard Pralambasura. Well, let's see. That was the second one. What was the first one?
The first one was
The first forest
the
fire.
friction, the first forest fire. Yeah.
Yeah, including the story of why Kalia actually left where he came from, because he was chased away by Garuda. But then why he went to Vrindavan was because Sobri Muni wouldn't let Garuda into that particular pond. And so Kalia knew that. And so he stayed there. And then we go back to the Leela and we hear about how, okay, so Krishna just defeated Kalia. And by now it's night. So they decided not to go back to town. They stayed the night at the banks of the Yamuna because they were there all day. They were tired. And then at night, there was a forest fire and Krishna swallowed it. And then it's summertime and we have Pralambasura coming into the games. There was a nice description of games and summer and animals and plants and dancing and clapping. And then Balaram killed Pralambasura because Pralambasura thought, well, Krishna's too strong, so I'll go after Balaram. How'd that work out for you? Not very good. And then there was another forest fire. Any reflections, questions, or comments?
I have a question. I
Yes.
think you kind of just began to answer it, but I mean, just what I'm noticing or curious about is why we saw two forest fires. So kind of like quickly, like, just a couple chapters ago out of like 19 stories. I'm just wondering if there's like more of like if there's a reason or like a significance to this like doubling down on the forest fire. Like why is it being used kind of like twice and
Yeah,
so
there
close?
must be some differences. We know there's differences in what they represent on the level of an art does. We know that, but one was with just the boys and cows in the middle of the day, and one was at night with everyone, all the residents of Vrindavan at the bank of the Yamuna. Little different mood. One was when the cows got lost, and the boys went after them and saw the cows were surrounded. One was when the whole village was surrounded by fire, and they were exhausted after staying up late while watching Krishna dance, and well, first watching him almost get killed, and then dancing on Kaliya. So there's a different, there's some subtlety, some nuance there. I think if you really want to, you want to know, you should read the chapters in the Bhagavatam. Go to the Bhagavatam and read the verses, and you read the BBT Bhagavatam, you'll get in the purports. Although this is after Prabhupada's left the planet, Prabhupada translated up to 1013. After that, a few years later, his disciples continued the service of translating, commenting. So the 10th canto is mostly done by Gopi Puranadana Prabhu, also Hirananda Das Goswami. Yeah, they wrote, and as far as I recall, the 10th canto was a lot of it was Gopi Puranadana Prabhu. But you see their commentaries are really drawing from the Acharyas. So you can see like whatever Vishwanath, Sanatana Goswami, Rupa Goswami have to say will be there in the purports. Why? I don't recall right now. But just like it's chapter 19 in the Krishna book, it's chapter 19 in the 10th canto. So I can give you a link. You just go to the database, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, and so the first forest fire was chapter 17, the second was chapter 19. So I'll put in chat. Here's one chapter, and here's another. And this is the verse by verse. So there'll be a chapter summary, and then verse by verse with the Sanskrit and commentaries, you'll hear about what happened. Just like we just heard Prabhupada summarize it in prose for us. You can actually just read verse by verse. And in the purports, there's more detail. So that can be your homework assignment if you want. You can be our specialist on Krishna's forest fires. And if you decide you want to do that, then we'll have you speak at the beginning of next class and give us your book report, what you found out. This is transcendental sleuthing. This is a great thing to do. It's a great job if you can get it. I used to do this all the time. In fact, people still come to me and ask me questions, and I'm like, all right, I'll look it up. It's a lot of fun. And if you can't find it there's the commentaries of different acharyas. I have a book here, actually. I'm looking at it. It's commentaries by different acharyas on the 10th canto. It's 2 volumes alone, thick ones, just commentaries by the different acharyas on this canto. Because this is the canto they comment on more than any other because there's so much. So if you can't find anything, I will pick up the slack and I will look in there. But I'm gonna pass the baton to you and empower you. How does that sound?
That sounds great. I love a good sleuth, and a transcendental sleuth sounds delightful.
Can't wait to hear what you turn on.
Be sleuthing.
I think 2 things I wanted to say. One is I want to ask Saraswati. I think I'm reading what you wrote twice, the 2 different things, and I think these were like reflections from the last reading initially that we were looking at how Krishna that he's steady and fast, and how he comes through in the end. Am I wrong in that, or?
Well, she's saying, love that all the time dealing with Maya, trust Krishna will swallow that fire of Maya and take care of us.
Right, and the one before that, it goes with what we said in the beginning in reflections.
Definitely she can well, but she said it at 7:34. So, but you can speak for herself. Please jump in. It seems like it,
Hey, so
yeah,
I don't know what I'm doing, you guys. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just like going with this is my first class.
great.
So um I think I was just listening to you guys at your reflections and then like I thought it was neat how we were talking about the reflections, but then of course it all tied into this class right now. And it all goes together with everything every moment anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the way I like to organize my sanghas and classes is I want it to be as collaborative as possible. So I really appreciate always using the chat and like raising your hand and sharing all the time. So don't feel like, yeah, definitely feel encouraged. Like we love that.
I think
Uh,
I was just trying to get it in my own head, you know, and then just like I was like, oh, this goes with like every like today, you know, all of our own stuff, right? And then it we're all in it together, no matter what's
Absolutely.
happening. Mm. It's fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hope to have more of you. Aaron, apologies if I missed this. What is the source of the Anarthas that Kishore is reading from? Yeah, so Julia sent a link in the chat. You can read about them more. They're from a Shastra by Bhaktivinoda Thakur called the Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, which there are 2 copies of which appear, I believe.
And I've shared it in the chat a couple times.
Yeah.
But I'll share it again.
She just did. It's there in chat.
Oh, okay.
And that's a book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
I'm gonna put it in the WhatsApp.
Put in the WhatsApp, yeah. It's a book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur where he talks about a lot of things, and this is one of them. So if you want, like, it's just like a page and a half, the link here, you can get a list of the different demons and what they represent. Good question. And yeah, any other reflections,
Let's see what Amy
questions? Yeah, what'd you hear, Amy?
Peter. You wrote a lot. I know I did. At the very beginning, you said something about devotees are Krishna's agents. He glorifies them. The best way to come to Krishna is through his devotees.
Yeah. That's when I was talking about what happened to Selbury for offending Garuda.
Here she is. Associating with devotees.
Jai. And giving us her association. Wonderful. Any other reflections?
The 2 forest fires,
Mhm.
I mean, all of the, you know, these 19 chapters or whatever it is has been so far is like demons coming at them. But these forest fires, they weren't sent by demons, or were they? It doesn't really say that they were. Is there significance that they're not? Yet there's anartas named after what they represent.
I don't remember if they're actually sentient. That's going to come up in the chapters that Julia's going to read for us.
Yeah.
I don't want to say without knowing for sure, because that's just speculation, and we don't do that. But let me see if I can find a hint in these comments by Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Excellent. Fair enough. And I will read those two
Yeah, we'll get back to you.
reports as well.
So between Julia's book report and my research, we'll have more on these forest fires and their nature next week. Transcendental research.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like just the nature of a forest fire, which is not, I have no answers for anything that anybody's asking. But I was just thinking about the nature of a forest fire and how quickly swept away it can get. And so
Yeah.
if you think about both of those anartas, how very important it is to not get swept away in those moments that come up in your life, in your devotional life, and your interactions with others. And it's really fascinating to think about just how fast and quick and rapid that both of those things can happen. And it's really potent.
Yeah. They both represent different aspects of interpersonal conflict. And it's true, forest fires can they can spread in a shockingly fast way. The lesson is there of how quickly conflict can get out of hand.
Just did a little search, but it'll be good to hear it actually from the purports of the Vedas. But I'm seeing here that in this context, forest fires are not explicitly depicted as demons, but rather they are understood as natural occurrences, or in some interpretations as manifestations of demonic nature's destructive potential.
Yeah. One way or another, they're interfering with Krishna's pastimes.
Yeah.
Clearly, they're affecting the cows and devotees, and so it's not random.
No.
Nothing's random anywhere, especially in Krishna's Leela. It's all part of Yoga Maya. So it's the time for the forest fire to happen. So there's a forest fire, and Krishna deals with it. But it sounds like they may not be sentient per se.
Right.
Nevertheless, there are obstacles for the devotees who have to deal with them. Yeah. There are other examples of that. Like, not all of these anarthas are exactly one-to-one with a demon. So like Nanda Maharaj gets captured by the Varuna. That's not a demon. Varuna is a devotee. But there's we'll get to it, hopefully, if we get that far. There's the Brahmins being indifferent towards Krishna. That happens in a few chapters. That's not a demon. Those are materialistically advanced religious people.
Breaking the twin Arjuna trees.
The Arjuna trees, yeah, that was
number 4.
That's not a demon.
Yeah. Lord Rama stealing the cowherd boys and calves, not a demon.
That's a devotee being confused. Indra, also not a demon, raining down hail and flood waters on Govardhan and Vrindavan. That's a major thing that happened. So, yeah, but 80% of them are demons. All right.
Okay. Homework.
So, yeah, the homework is to read chapters 17, 18, and 19. And if you want to get extra credit, keep reading. and you can even read from the Bhagavatam. And please comment in the WhatsApp so that we can all receive whatever's happening for you around these things, because they're all so enlivening to read. So thank you so much. We'll see you next week, and see you in the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarupyascha kripasindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Gauranga, Shri Krishna Book Ki Jai. Haribol.
Haribol.